Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the Newark and Sherwood series, a district of 84 civil parishes right in the centre of Nottinghamshire. Come with me as we delve into one of them. Welcome back to Newark and Sherwood, everybody. Now today you find me starting this episode next to a major road. Now we've mentioned this road a few times before, but we haven't really seen it. This is the A17 and it runs out of Newark towards the town of Sleaford in Lincolnshire. And if you were to drive along it from Newark, you would pass the Newark Golf Club. And here you've got golf, you've got a practice range, you've got coaching, golf shop, and also Lindley's Catering. This belongs to the parish of Barnby-in-the-Willows. This Newark and Sherwood video is sponsored by Past Days, a family history blog by June Terrington. You'll find a link in the description. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Barnby-in-the-Willows is one of my favourite Newark and Sherwood villages. Why is that, you ask? Well, simply because it's well out of the way, miles from anywhere, and it's oh so very quiet. The village's name first appears as Barnesbe in the year 1575 during the reign of Elizabeth I. It was named in the Willows to distinguish it from another village, Barnby-in-the-Moor. It's a village which you'll find some 4 miles east of Newark-on-Trent, lying on the northern banks of the River Witham, which flows north towards Lincoln. It's a tiny place too. 5 streets make up the centre of Barnby. These are Front Street, Dark Lane, Cross Lane, Long Lane and Back Lane. It has around 110 houses, a parish church which dates from the 13th century, a pub, a village hall, a village green and a small playing field owned by Barnby Manor Estates. The parish boundaries also include Newark Golf Club to the west. Perhaps the most interesting feature of this village would be the river. The Witham peacefully makes its way through the swathes of open countryside that surround the village. Its path is supposed to form the border with Lincolnshire, but that's not quite true anymore. Come with me for one final time this year in Newark and Sherwood and let's find out why. Now, as villages go within Newark and Sherwood, this one is well out of the way. It's not close to anything really. And part of that is to do with its location because it's close to the river. Now, speaking of the river, that's going to be the end point to this walk. And it's behind the church. You can access the river in plenty of places all along here. But the place I'm going to access the river is at the church. And that's going to be the last part of today's walk. First of all, we need to walk around the village itself. This is not a very big place. Should take me no more than about half an hour, 45 minutes, I would have thought. But it has got a few interesting landmarks, some of which I've already driven past, so I know what to look for. Let's go. Our route around Barnby starts at the end of Front Street, where the Parish Church of All Saints is located. We're heading north. Straight away, we've got an old building of note. In front of us here is the old post office. Most of the buildings on Front Street seem to indicate a surge of activity here in the mid-18th century. There's a lot of yellow and red speckled brickwork on show with bow-headed windows, which were fashionable in the late 1700s and early 1800s. As Front Street continues, we pass Dovecote Farm, which is in your shot right now. This is the location of an early 17th century dovecote, which is 63 feet in circumference and 15 feet high. It had 728 nesting holes at one time. It's one of Barnby's Grade 2 listed buildings. A little further up Front Street we come to this cul-de-sac, seemingly called Hen and Chicken Yard. Now you're not going to get much more of a rural name than that, are you? So we've arrived at Cross Lane, which I won't be walking up, but to be fair, it's not the biggest of streets. I'm stood at one end of it and the other end is literally just there. There's a red phone box at the other end, so by walking up it I'm missing virtually nothing. That's how small this place is. That's Barnby House on the corner. So where are all the willows, you ask? Well, the willows referred to in Barnby's name are osier willows. They grew along the riverbank and were used for weaving. The last time osiers were grown as a crop in Barnby was in 1900. Here we have the village pub, the Willow Tree, which has been here since the 18th century. Barnby used to have another pub too, the Nag's Head, which was here as early as 1753. It's now known as Wimondley House. A quick hop over Long Lane and we find the bus stop. Yes, Barnby might be well out of the way, but it's still serviced by a bus. Or 4 in fact. Your magic numbers according to Google are the 1B, 47, 69B and E. After that, it's a left turn onto Long Lane, and here we have a footpath, and this might just be the weirdest path I've ever walked down. Check out these gates, they're like nothing I've ever seen before. Let me tell you, this thing is not easy to get through. And I've got a camera in my hand as well, so I'm kind of having to do it one-handed. Blimey, I've never seen one of those things before. And all the footpaths I've ever walked on, that is something new to me. Anyway, down here, I'm hoping there isn't one at the other end. The path runs past this lovely little orchard. I have no information on this, but isn't this just a fabulous little feature? Barnby has plenty of these footpaths too. A lot of them lead out towards the River Witham. Thankfully, most of them don't have these weird gates, but unluckily for me, the only footpath I was using on this route did, because yes, there was one at the other end. Anyway, at the end we have the village green. Next to the green is the smallest, cutest little playing field I think I've ever seen. There's no playground, just a football pitch, and not a full-size one by the way. The playing field and the green are owned by Barnby Manor Estates. And also on this screen we have the village's old red phone box. You won't find a book exchange in here, but it is still in use. This is where you'll find the village's defibrillator. I think this is easily the loveliest corner of Barnby-in-the-Willows. I'm really enjoying this village. It's so quiet. I haven't seen many people at all, and it's just nice to be away from an area where you haven't got traffic rushing past you. This is one good thing about it being really in the middle of nowhere. Opposite the green we have an old chapel. This was the village's Wesleyan Methodist chapel, which was active between the years of 1825 and 1912. As far as I can tell, the primitive Methodists never had a chapel here. One thing Barnby is definitely known to have had though is a Quaker burial ground. It's not 100% clear whereabouts it's located, but it's believed to be in the field to the southwest of Barnby Hall. That's according to some documents dating from 1682. We'll see Barnby Hall towards the end of this route. The hall is where the Sharp family, long associated with Barnby, lived for many years. There are many memorials to the Sharps within the church too. At the end of Back Lane we have the old schoolhouse. This looks like it should really belong on Front Street, given its style. It was originally a landless labourer's cottage and dates from approximately 1770. Okay, so here's the parish notice board. Not a great deal going on at the moment. Something about the Barnby Village Committee. Okay. Anyway, there's my car. Barnby-in-the-Willows is done, and this is outside the village hall. This is the former Jubilee School, which closed at the end of 1963. The boys had a garden and toilets behind the school building on the left side, and the girls similarly on the right. After a couple of years standing empty, the building reopened as the village hall. Back Lane then becomes Back Street for a few yards, and the white building you can see here is Barnby Grange. Surprisingly, this is not a listed building. There are 6 in the village, and the only one we haven't seen so far is the Dovecote. Next we have Dark Lane. Now normally, where you encounter a street with the name Dark, you find it's overhung by trees, hence making the road dark. Here in Barnby, well, there are no trees, so I wonder why it's called Dark Lane. And then we turn the corner back onto Front Street, and right in front of us is Barnby Hall. This cannot be dated accurately with any certainty, but it's believed to have been built in the mid-18th century. Okay, we've arrived back at the church, which we're going into in a moment, but this house here caught my eye first. That's the old vicarage. All Saints Church now. Nobody seems to know for sure whether the nave or the chancel here was built first, but both date from the early 1300s. It also has a south porch, also 14th century, which has been restored several times. The church also has 6 bells which hang in a cast iron H-frame made by tailors of Loughborough in 1932. The smallest of the bells is the treble, which was added to celebrate the reign of King George V from 1910 to 1935. As mentioned earlier, the church has numerous memorials to the Sharp family. On the south wall of the chancel is an alabaster memorial to Mary Sharp, the 24-year-old daughter of George Sharp, who died in 1742. The bust shows her head looking through the east chancel window towards Barnby Hall. The Sharp family gave the church a silver plate, dated 1648, and a silver flagon, dated 1743. Both items are decorated with the Sharp's crest. So as far as I can tell in this church, there's no stained glass. And you'll remember from previous episodes when we've seen churches like this, it allows all the natural light in, so you can see things a heck of a lot clearer. Let's have a little explore. I've noticed a couple of things on the walls. Here we've got a tablet which is to Charles John Frederick Platt, a major, killed on active service February the 4th, 1943, so that'll be during World War II. There are 2 interesting tablets here. I can't read what that one says, but I can read this one a bit better. These are to do with people who are buried close to these spots, and this one has got something to do with Oxford, but once again it's a bit hard to read. Let's move down. I love these little chandeliers, by the way, with the candle shaped bulbs on them. They're quite cool. There's a tablet here on the wall. It's obviously the Lord's Prayer. Yep. Hello, Mum. There's a visitor's book. I'll leave a card there in a second. And something else I noticed too on this wall over here. This magnificent painting or print. Isn't that gorgeous? It's fabulous. Got a little tablet here. This is in memory of Elizabeth Annie Jack, a benefactor of the church, 1893 to 1966. And perhaps one of the most important things I've noticed is this here. This is an old map of Barnby-in-the-Willows, and the church, well, it hasn't moved much at all. In fact, it hasn't moved. It's there, right on the River Witham. And that is where I'm about to go now. And the river here is quite interesting because it doesn't follow the same course as it used to. And that means we have some boundary anomalies to talk about. Let's go and have a look at it. So welcome to the banks of the Witham, where the osier willows which give Barnby its name once grew. This is supposed to form the parish boundary and the county boundary between Lincolnshire and Nottinghamshire, in theory. However, rivers are like living creatures and the direction in which they flow often changes. Because of that, the Witham no longer follows the course it once used to, but the parish boundary still follows the old course of the river. As a result, there are several pockets of land either side of the Witham which are strictly speaking on the wrong side of the river. You can see here I've highlighted the areas which are stranded in the wrong county. I would imagine local farmers don't worry too much about this, but this kind of thing has caused border disputes all over the world. The most notable one I can think of is the Dragonia River on the border between Croatia and Slovenia. Okay, it's very windy here, so I'm not going to stay around here for too long. I should walk back to the edge of the bridge. You might be able to hear me. A bit of a shelter from the trees. So the river is supposed to be the county boundary between Lincolnshire and Nottinghamshire here, but of course, as I've just explained, it does have this weird situation where, because the river has basically forged itself an easier path, as it were, thanks to erosion, you do have these pockets of land which don't really belong on the right side of the river, and so parts of this side of the river belong to Lincolnshire, technically speaking, but they find themselves effectively in Nottinghamshire, which is odd, but that's just how it goes. That's what rivers do. They find the path of least resistance so that they flow quicker. That's just how rivers work. I'm sure a lot of you might remember that from your days at school, and there's a cracking example of how it happens just there. Anyway, we are done with the parish of Barnby-in-the-Willows, and it's time for me to move on to my next one here in Newark and Sherwood. Although the next episode you'll see, if you're a regular viewer, won't be a Newark and Sherwood episode next Tuesday, because I'm going to be heading out that way now, over the River Witham, into Lincolnshire, to catch a village in North Kesteven. So that means that the next Newark and Sherwood episode you'll see will be next year. So have a fantastic Christmas, everybody, here in Newark and Sherwood, and I will see you next year somewhere else in the district. I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot. This has been the parish of Barnby-in-the-Willows, and I'm out.